Hello, 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 most beautiful, gracious stars. You are at Stars of the Morning Light. I am Courtney, host and Akashic messenger. So, I want to put out there for everybody right now, I am live, but myself and many others have been having technical issues within going live lately. So, if you are in the chat, if you are listening, as I am live. If there are technical issues, please notify me in the chat because I might have to stop speaking with you here and record this later on. Even the beloved Akashic told me, Courtney, you should record all of your videos for the next 3 weeks. Well, I just found that out yesterday, and edgarcayce life skill studies happens every Wednesday. So, we're gonna see what happens here, folks. So, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you are new here, consider subscribing, hitting those thumbs up for me. There is a playlist to all of the edgarcayce material. We are either going to ever be in his bio, which I'm taking a very long time discussing his bio to bring humanity to this sleeping prophet, bring his true nature and form, and teaching many life skills to those who are waking up to their abilities. And or we are in one of his source materials. Currently, we are talking about reincarnation. After reincarnation, we will be going into his predictions for the time we live in, folks. I started this series about a year ago to bring what Edgar was doing 100 years ago, 100 years forward, to give a bit more explanation or to state if things have changed as far as his predictions based on the human experiences or what is still in play. Today is a video on his reincarnation, and we are in chapter 7, which is about children. There's actually a lot to cover here, folks. So I do hope that everyone can hear me, see me, and that everyone is having a good day. I see that Jackie J came into the chat. Good to see you, my dear. I will also try to speak a bit more slowly today to make sure that everything is being transmitted appropriately. So, lovely Jackie, if you notice that things get a little wonky, please let me know. I'm sure others will join in the chat. When I am live, I try to communicate and engage with the audience. Oh, thank you, Jackie. Jackie just said she can hear me well. Thank you. Like I said, today we're going to be discussing children. Um, he had a lot of readings for parents regarding their children, and it could be from thought patterns and habits and behaviors that children are expressing, things that children seem to be going through, attitudes, all sorts of stuff. And Casey was very consistent and also his ideal in parenting skills. Today's video, then, being stated right now, might be a little, I don't think it would be triggering, but it might uh, um, expose some aspects of your own personal childhood and or if you're a parent, some things that, oh, maybe I should take more of Edgar's advice. Okay. So it shouldn't really be triggering, but it will bring a lot of depth and insight as to our own personal childhoods as we are now adults. And also, if we are parents, maybe some life skills that we can use with our own children. Okay. So, welcome everybody. Thank you, Jackie, for telling me that you can hear me. Um, for those who are consistent viewers here, thank you. I appreciate you. For everybody else, please hit that notification bell. Make sure that you're viewing definitely the Gabriel messages on Sunday and the Friday morning lives at 11 a.m. Great material there. This past Friday is when I was having extreme technical difficulties. I didn't know how far and wide those difficulties were happening within my system. Um, that video, that recording, or that live, I should say, topic on love and healing, that will be for Friday. Okay, beloveds. So we are in, as I hold the book up, this is the original copy of Edgar Cayce on Reincarnation, written in 1969. We are in chapter 7, and I will be bouncing around throughout the material. I do not read word for word, but I do a great overview of what is being said and documented here. This book, Edgar Cayce on Reincarnation, it applies and shows and brings to light many of the case studies through his readings. The before, the reading, after the reading often, because people would be so grateful, they would then contact Cayce and say, this is, how beneficial your reading was for us. Or even concerning like young people, Cayce's organization, the IRE, would contact these children who are now adults later in life to see if the reading benefited them even much later in life. So this book is in regard to that, with a little bit of a mix on his approach to reincarnation. So I want to start with that. There is actually, it's found in a reading. And all of these case studies are broken up into page breaks or sections. So this is just a quick quote from one of the case studies. But for me, this is this is a part of why we're here, or what to avoid while we're here. And the loneliest person, the loneliest individual, yes, the loneliest entity is the one who has lost hold upon his own self. So let's bring that into today's vocabulary. The loneliest person, the loneliest out of all of us, is the person who has lost themselves. In today's world, you hear a lot about remembering. Remember who you are. Remember who you are. And then back that up with your authenticity. Be who you are. Well, then we can put it into context that the loneliest person is the one who has lost themselves. Because no matter where you go, no matter where you are, no matter what time and space you are existing, you are with yourself. Always. On this plane of existence and elsewhere. So that is actually one of the goals in this reincarnation aspect, is to not lose ourselves in the midst of living the day to day, and the 3D consciousness fog, the forgetfulness, but to actually spend quality time with ourselves, learn ourselves, remember ourselves. It's so interesting that we don't actually use it as much as we should when it's um written over it's written over the threshold of so many prominent spiritual places, the phrase know thyself. And for all those people that have adopted a bunch of the theories from the movie The Matrix, what was the main theme of the first film? Know thyself. If we don't have that, and we sink more and more into that bitterness of loss, the loss of self, we then are the loneliest. So, throughout this entire chapter, especially because it is pertaining to children, one of the most greatest things we can do for our youth is to emphasize over and over and over again all that wonderful decision making, all that lovely communication, all of that lovely, you're going to be an adult one day, experience and create and enjoy who you are now so as you can also as an adult. Have them not lose themselves in whatever way, shape, or form that might look like. Oh, thank you, Miss Jackie J. She said, this is going to be a powerful, powerful class already. Thank you, my dear. So I wanted to point this out, and because now we're going to get into a lot of the different case studies. And he opened one up just to kind of introduce the idea of doing readings for children and how they would look. Um, he even reported Edgar, um, for Edgar, once a child turned 13, that child would actually have to give permission for a reading, a personal reading. For me, it's 14. So it is that age. I give it that 13th year, and then at 14, if they choose to have a reading, I have to have the permission from them, the child. I cannot get into their Akashic records 14 and up without the child's permission. So even if a parent says, "Hey, I need a reading for my child," if it is solely the child's reading, I'm not able to do it. I can do a reading for the parent, and of course, that would go into some aspects of what's going on with their child. But if it's solely about the child, age 14 for me is that cutoff. I have to have permission from the child. Before that, so Edgar's cutoff was 13. It's pretty much the same thing. I just wanted to have that rounded year of 13 there to make sure that when they give permission, they're truly understanding, right? Because all things are based on permission. Prior to that, so from pre-birth, birth, through life, I am able to do readings for children based on the permission of the parents, parent or parents, whoever the guardian is, guardians, plural, what have you. After that, it's solely based on the permission of that youth, that young adult, young person. Which, see, these things people might not know. And that's why I also do this, because if you go to read any of Edgar Cayce's materials, there's gonna be little snippets in there, and sometimes it's not, explained as to why. And everything within the metaphysical community should always be, and it is, regardless if someone is practicing it or not, based on permission. So that is the cutoff age. For any of you that are considering wanting to get a reading for your child or your troubled teen, right? That troubled teen actually has to give me permission. And usually they're pretty cool with it. Yet and still, I can't do it if they don't. On the ethics of metaphysical work. Okay, making that very clear. Little food for thought, little tidbit. So the first case was just interesting. I just want to read a quote because these are the souls that are actually departing now. This is a quote. All those souls who enter the earth, sorry, let me read this better. All souls who enter the earth plane in the years 1943, 1944, 1945 will apparently be destined to fulfill interesting roles in their service to their fellow man and find a very unusual approach to the same. So, beloveds, so apparently those born in so they came into this world, reincarnated into this world in 1943, 1944, 1945. Now, the reason I thought that interesting, because it's on the first page of this chapter, is I had a stepdad who just recently passed away, who was born in 1943. And at some point over the years, I kind of did the math. And there's 12 years between my mother and him. But I kind of did the math because his characteristics, his kind of belief structure, just his personality. Very much kind of older boomer. He was right on that. Is he a silent generation or is he a boomer, right? So very just different than like my mother's time period of growing up. So I once did the math and I went, okay, he was born in 1943. That means that in 1983, he was 40 years old. So any of us who are a bit older, thinking back on the 80s and 90s, could you imagine being 40 then and already in your career, already pretty much established, already it was just this beautiful incline on top of, okay, you're born during a war. You're born during a war. So you're coming into a very complex energy, regardless of where you were born, because this is going to come up at the end as well for the children who pass and die away during wartime. So we're going to start from being born during that, right? And this, beautiful beings, please know I'm bringing this up as well because we had a lot of children. This is being recorded in 2025. We had a lot of children born during what would be called the pandemic period, just of recent. 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. This will also apply to those children in many ways. They're a fascinating, beautiful group. Those kids are going to be amazing. But there's reasons why. So some of this I'm going to be using the material, and some of this I'm just going to bring 100 years forward in making these comparisons and helping to bring some understanding, clarity, and demonstration to the energies. Now, when I bring up the generational aspect, it's not to have labels and all of separation as the world would love to create. It's actually because generations actually come to be not so much on the time frame, but the aspects and the happenings which create the energy of that person's life. So, in the audience here, I actually have a lot of Gen Xers and a lot of boomers that are viewers. Thank you. Awesome. And then a bit of millennials. Here's the thing, each generation has lived within some collective energy, collective thoughts that influences, as Casey would talk about, the outside influences, the past life influences, and the higher power influences that create who we are in a lot of ways. And each generation has their own kind of little characteristics based on the influences of the energies that were set at their most predominant growing living years. Those born, like it was just said, from a quote from a Casey reading, those babies born in 1943, 1944, 1945 will have a destined, distinct, unique way of servicing and helping their fellow man. So when we really do the math and we really look at that life, that is a big pocket of those who would have been old enough to really truly participate in the civil rights movements, in all the positive aspects of anti-war movements, all of also into the new age, new technology movements. These movements were more run and operated and created by people born during that time. So there are these babies being born during chaos, confusion, energy of death, sadness, depression, loneliness, fear, fear, fear. They were being born into this world in World War II. But then as adults, they were making the changes needed for where we are today. And now those people are 80, 81, 82 years old. They're beginning to leave us. So sometimes when as we get older, and all of us really do this, it's the psychology of or elder psychology, I should say. As we get older, we become more fixed. And so sometimes when we are with these individuals who are around that 80s age, they are very fixed in their ways. But it is also because that pocket of people very much were born into that time period to create new cause and effect in this land. And they're still holding on to that, which is beautiful and great and perfectly fine for those individuals because they will then come again. And we're going to need all that they learned, right, wrong, selfish, unselfish, all that they experienced. We're going to need all of that awareness when they return. Bringing that to today, those lovely babies that were born out of the COVID pandemic, those beautiful babies. I don't know if y'all have met these kids yet. They are, oh my gosh, they're amazing. I love them. They too, even though it wasn't a war, fascinating, interesting time for us adults going through it, and definitely the babies being born into that energy. Once again, loss, chaos, complexities, fears, sadness, the energy of death. Same kind of energy. And so now we're seeing these little babies starting to talk and doing their thing. And man, are they some old souls, as we would like to say. They are amazing because they were born into that. And so, everyone, please remember all beautiful creation, all things are actually created in the darkness. And it's the light that comes in and penetrates the darkness that shines the bright and makes new creation possible. So when we look at these babies born during the COVID, that's their job. That is their job. That once they are into adulthood, they're going to go, hey, we can do this. Do you know what I was born into? Do you know what I felt when I first got here to 3D? Hey, we can handle all this. And we have all this awareness. We have all this amazing ways to go about it. They are old souls. They are interesting individuals. They feel, they express, they experience in ways that a lot of people are not there yet. So bless them. Thank you, Lucky Stone 888 for coming in. So I wanted to bring what Edgar said from 100 years ago, because he was alive in 1943. So this, and he was starting to do a lot more readings because of the war. That we cover in his biography. We're not even really there yet, but we're gonna go back to that concept at the end of this video. It's gonna shine a lot of light onto things. Okay? Especially those reincarnated from that time period. So all of you that had babies during the COVID, just if they're a little bit different, if they view things differently, if they'll say stuff, if they are very spiritual. I mean, clearly, gifted kids, roll with it. And today you'll learn how to handle that more so. Because they're gonna be great for us. I can't wait, because 'cause I'm gonna be old. Those kids are gonna be the ones that's like, "Hey, I'm old. You guys gotta do the work. You guys gotta figure it out, because 'cause I'm I did my part." So I am grateful for everybody having those young people in today's world. I really do. Okay, so here's the funny part too, and I'm so happy they covered this, and it's just a little section. This is to kind of get into a little bit of fun. I love all the people that are constantly like, yes, I was a princess and I was, an Egyptian king and whatever these people say. Edgar actually speaks about it, and I'm going to read it as in, mm, not so many of us were what is put in quotes here as celebrities of whatever time period. Could be like a high priest, could be, a pharaoh king, it could be a, queen or whatnot. Um, you could have been a part of the queen's court. That's a very different thing, right? That just means you're somewhere in the family mix. That does not mean you're the queen. So I love when uh, I view and I witness that apparently so many people were celebrities at some point. Fascinating. So let's read about it. And they call it the bubble reputation. This seems an opportune moment to point out that the celebrities, quote unquote, of history represent a very small minority in the life readings. So out of all of the readings Edgar Cayce did, which y'all, it's a ton that because they were recording from beginning to the end, right? As we learn in his bio videos. That was a very small minority. Casey suggested that most souls made their greatest spiritual advances while living obscure and uneventful lives, usually under fairly straitened circumstances. The average initiate to reincarnation toys rather wistfully with the possibility that he has at least once caused the earth to bow down before him. So they start going to this case study of this kid. This kid. So please take that in, folks. Out of all of Casey's ratings, a very small minority had actually been some celebrity, political, grandiose figure in our history. So when you hear people say this, take it with a grain of salt. What I think might be happening is what I suggested. They might have not have been the queen, but they were in the court, which means that they would have, lived somewhere within that palace. They would have might have had tea with her at times, and they're mistaking themselves as something more celebrity and grandiose than they are. So then they go into this case study with this kid, and these parents are having a very difficult time. Let's say this kid is very fixed, very opinionated. And this is a young child. I think this reading was done when he was like 7 years old. Because these parents were just, it was no matter what I say, whatever I tell him, he's in disagreement or he is in, it's a very black or white situation. It is very yes or is very no. And they had no idea how to kind of loosen this kid up and, go have fun and find the gray in life, find the colors in life. Well, come to find out that this child was actually the reincarnation of Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton, 1775 to 1804, soldier hero and the founding father of the American Constitution, whose life was cut short by the famous duel, would seem to have been a highly evolved soul at a mature level of unselfish dedication. Yet this did not prevent him returning as a rather harassed young man of Jewish faith whose parents obtained his first reading from Edgar Cayce when he was 5 weeks old. I apologize because there's more readings to it. So, Alexander Hamilton. This is how it works, folks. Because now I'm just going to paraphrase because those parents did multiple readings for this kid. He was born so Alexander Hamilton was reincarnated into a very a Jewish family and probably more restrictive at that time. Let's say very I don't want to say orthodox because that's different. I don't think they were orthodox by what the reading said, but you know, there's very traditional. That's the word I want to use. And this kid was refusing to do things. He was very opinionated, like I said. He was very black and white with his ways. He was causing the parents a lot of trouble. Well, come to find out, that was a continuation, though, that kept going on. So Edgar would report, hey, actually keep him away from guns. Alexander Hamilton was killed in that duel. Edgar warned them, don't let him be around firearms because there could even be an accident. There's a whole case study in here to also bring that up. Accident prone children. So that's first and foremost. Edgar was first and foremost concerned, well, the kid's got to stay alive. So keep guns away from him because we don't need that karma influencing a possible accident. Take that in, folks. How many of us do you think died in certain ways in our past lives that caused possible accidents in this world, in our life of now? Also, him being so fixed in his opinions. Well, Alexander Hamilton was a big figure in our US Constitution, Americans' birth, let's say. We don't have to go into the history. Most of us here in America do know this history. If you're not from here, look him up. It would be a quick Google search. Fascinating character in American history. But then that also made that in this life, who now he's just this young Jewish child trying to learn their customs, trying to learn their ways, their traditions, learn their way throughout also early America, which this would have still been I think this was happening like in the 30s. So do know that Jewish people in the 30s still here in America were not necessarily looked upon favoritively, right? Also, the war is looming. There's a lot of complex stuff happening. So this child who his parents are trying to just say, keep your nose to the ground, do as people say, be polite, smile, nod, wave, move on. Well, he's very willful. That, though, did persist. No matter what Casey's readings were, no matter what the parents did or did not do, his willfulness continued to go on and on. Also, he did not really choose to follow the Jewish traditions, and he married outside of the Jewish culture. He married a young, fair, red hair lady, and that marriage did not go well. His entire life was more based on the fixed convictions of Alexander Hamilton than his actual current life. That marriage took a really bad turn with an affair that caused a big accident somewhere in the mix. That it wasn't until after that dangerous accident, let's say, with a lover, her lover, that he started turning his world around. But by that time, wow, lots to catch up on. So when we talk about influences, there's going to be stuff that if we have the awareness, we can definitely fix and change. That is what these lives are about. And oftentimes outside influences of the current life might not be able to shift and change that for us because it is rooted in something else. When we get into the parenting aspect, this is I will talk more about that aspect. With that being said, what's interesting is then he talks about because I'm jumping around this chapter, of course, people, and I see that Seeker of Truth has come in. Good to see you, my dear. Thank you for being here. They also talk about people that in somewhere in their lives that had been present for any of the wonderful masters, from Christ to Buddha, any of the wonderful masters, if they were in that time frame and witnessed the works and wonders and love, that those people were the people that we might be able to see today that have a very strong faith and also like unwavering faith, but they also are able to give the most compassion. But it's because at some point they witnessed it first on, eyes on, knows that is possible. Somewhere within them, they know it is possible. So I find, give me 1 second. Oh, 116. Yeah, I'm bopping around the chapter. I hope everybody is well. Once again, I hope this is not at all going to be a trigger for people, but it is more so to help people understand either what's going on with the kids today, how we can help raise our children better, and or bring some clarity as to your life. So this is kind of, I'm going to piggyback off of that Alexander Hamilton aspect that sometimes there's going to be stuff that we actually can't change because we're working through that energy, and it's going to help us in some way or not. I want to remind people that the last time we were talking about this reincarnation stuff here in this source material, Edgar Cayce on reincarnation, he stated that six, every sixth life was going to be an easy, mundane, nothing really happens too severe life. And then after that sixth life, it's going to start hitting us like a tidal wave. So many things are going to be happening, right? To work out, quote unquote, the energetic karmic residue, as I refer to it as, of influences. That's all karma is. It's an influence. It's not a it's just an influence. It's not a predestination. It's not a fixed anything. All those influences, though, can start coming back. And I mean in full force. And then you have those 5 lives of it hitting and hitting. And by the life you're going to have before the sixth, that fifth one. So please take this in, everybody, especially for those who in this current life, it seemed to have not stopped. In today's world, they want to call you chosen ones. In today's world, they want to call you a light worker. In today's world, they have a lot of terms. I'm not saying they're wrong, but this life that you are currently in, if it was difficult from beginning to now, it was the accumulation, okay, for you to process through a whole lot of the karmic residue, get through it, choose differently. Choose differently. Learn, choice, action. Learn, choice, action. Awareness, choice, action, however you want to put it. And then we get a life to go, oh, okay, whoa, that was a lot. That was a lot. We get to just sit back and drink the tea on the front porch and take it real easy. Take it real easy. I want to emphasize though, right now, because of the time frame that we're living in, and this is why people are talking about chosen ones, light workers, what have you. This will be actually covered more on my live Friday mornings at 11 a.m. chant shows. Is it more profound? Is it moving much more fast? Is it much more possibly traumatic? Yes, as of current. Because in this time, because we have never seen this energy, we have never seen the majority of the planets doing what they're doing. We have never walked into the Grand Awakening like this. We have never walked into the Age of Aquarius like this, folks. We are living through the most amazing, exciting, glorious time, and you chose to be here. And many of us, including myself, so you're not alone, many of us said, I have to I have to take all of the karmic residue, all of the karmic influences that I need to gain awareness from and choose differently, heal, choose, action. I have to take all of that that is remaining and I need to finish it. So for many of people, this is why they say the chosen ones, which I want to remind folks, chosen one had always meant and will always mean the definition of chosen one is a person who reveals God's secrets. So a chosen one, a light worker, a healer, an advanced being, an ascended soul, all of these things that people are working towards in today's world. Beautiful, great, I love it, because it's what we're supposed to be doing. Chose, before they got here, they said, give me hell because I'm ready. I can handle this. I can get through all of the outside influences that have been penetrating my timeline, my reincarnations that have been affecting me. I can take it on. I can transmute it. I can heal. I can do better. Why? Because the next time we come around, we're going to need to have a very clean slate. That is what's happening. In 1940 something, when a lot of this stuff is being recorded, and earlier, written about in 1969 in this book, the world was nowhere near where it is now. I mean, whew. I mean, we're at the finish line, folks. We're at the finish line of a whole new dawn, and it's lovely. But that is the answer as to why a lot of these things go on. So, just like Alexander Hamilton's life influenced that man's life, which I'm sure he's back probably now, doing something different, right? Maybe he's a rabbi now. Maybe Alexander Hamilton was born into a traditional Jewish family, didn't follow the path, had a very difficult time with life because he was a stubborn, stubborn person. Maybe now he's a rabbi in a big Jewish synagogue that is having to lay down his selfishness and his fixed nature to be more compassionate and open to all of all of the parishioners. I'm not sure what hmm. If somebody knows, leave me a comment below. If somebody knows what the name of the congregation of a synagogue is. I don't know if they go by congregation, parishioners, followers, or just Jews. That's a little good thing to Google, isn't it? Let me know in the comments, please. The mother of a 12-year-old boy, Lonnie, asked for her son's life reading in hopes that it would aid her to understand his his behavior and pattern. Despite the great tact Edgar always employed, the reading clearly reveals his serious concern for the boy's future welfare, and a note of sober warning is implicit in every line. So Edgar would usually end up saying the same thing to parents as to how to parent your child, because the Akashic is going to say the same thing over and over again. Trust me, they do. But in this particular case, he said that, but then they went into being more concerned with something else. In giving the records here of this entity, so the boy, it would be easy to interpret them either in a very optimistic or a very pessimistic vein, for there are great possibilities and great obstacles. Here's the opportunity for an entity to be either a Beethoven or a Whittier or a Jesse James. For the entity is inclined to think more highly of himself than he ought. And that is what these three individuals did. As to the application made of it, it depends upon the individual self. Here is an entity, boy, who has abilities latent within self, which may be turned into music or poetry or writing in prose, which few would ever excel. Or there may be the desire to have his own way to such an extent that he will disregard others altogether in every form, just so he has his own way. So, beloveds, like Alexander Hamilton. Like what I just said, many of us chose in many ways to say, hit me with all you got, because it's going to be done. I got this. I know I do. Right? Well, let's say we were one of those that said, hit me with all you got. I'm going to take care of all this karma garbage, all this karma stuff, good, positive, negative, whatever. I'm going to completely have a life to finish that cycle, the entire cycle. Okay. Well, how much of a person do you think has a very strong will and very self-focused is born out of those kind of choices before they even get here? Pretty self-focused. And so when you get into this world of the 3D forgetfulness, but yet you carry that kind of energy, very self-focused, thinks very highly of themselves. And this could be beautiful people. This could be in great, grandiose ways. But there's also those who think very highly of themselves with a very poor, low self esteem because it's still all about self. These people, though, as Edgar is trying to say, it will all come down to the choices they make in this current life. So, this young boy who's 12 years old at the time of this reading, Edgar is saying, my goodness, he has the enthusiasm, the desires, the strength, the courage, all of these great qualities to actually make him as successful and profound and talented as a Beethoven, as a Whittier. But those qualities could also be applied to a Jesse James, a criminal, And so I will tell all of you, as some of you have stayed here with me for a good while at Stars of Morning Light, thank you. I am transparent here. I came into this world saying, hit me with the most, because I'm good. I'm done. I'm going to clear it. I'm going to make different decisions. That did not mean that the first 25 years of my life, I made some of the worst decisions I could ever possibly make. I was self-grandiose to the utmost. And I fell into that. I don't care about any people, places, or things. I would have had you thought that I did, because I think I truly wanted to, but I couldn't yet. I couldn't make those decisions. Because why? I said, hit me with all you got. So I was full of fear, anger, loneliness, as we said at the beginning. The loneliest person is the one who lost themselves. Well, with all the turmoil and chaos of my youth, I had completely lost myself. It wasn't until an accident, as some of us become accident prone, some might say an accident is also divine intervention. Some might say it's one of those pivotal moments in our lives that we actually choose before we get here. And then how we use that and make choices out of it on the back end of it is what makes the difference. An accident in my life then had me choosing very differently. So now, do I take all those same beautiful qualities, as in my ability to sit here in front of you and have the courage to say all of these things, to be transparent with all these beautiful strangers, to walk with energy that I don't want to say it is dominant. I have intense, more dominant than so energy, and I know I do. But that I use for the good now. That I use that when you see me, I'm going to give you a big old bear hug and take you in and allow you to release all that negative stuff. I'm doing that with you right now. Now I use it for that, right? I use my intensity, my courage, my self confidence to help, to create, to be supportive, to give that energy out to you and the earth. I didn't do that the first 25 years of life at all. To the point that, I mean, I broke the first kid's nose. I think I broke somebody's nose in like first grade, guys. I was a very angry, violent, dangerous child. And then it just kept going. And then it turned into drinking and drugging. It just kept going. So, first 25 years, woo, crazy. I'm on now the other half of them 25 years. I'm rounding the bend of that, let's say, in there. Much very, very different based on the individual's choices, my choices. So, this I hope can encourage everyone that regardless, we can choose to heal, gain the awareness, heal, start choosing differently, and start acting and changing and growing differently, regardless of what has transpired. Because maybe you're a chosen one. Maybe you're one that said, yep, hit me with all you got. To then, on the back end of all that, you go, look at me shine. Right? He talks about it. He talks about it in great detail. So let's go into that. Let's say you are a parent, or you are considering being a parent, or This might bring light to things that you wish you had as a child. And it can also bring light to how I do have a bit more self confidence than others, or I am quick to make decisions. We'll discuss it. Good to see you, Lori. I'm hoping the chat is doing well and that everyone is having a great day. And I'm so grateful in this moment that all of my electronics and everything seems to be transmitting to all of you correctly. That makes me very, very happy. This is what Edgarcayce would say about childcare. The ARE files contain an abundance of grateful correspondence from people Casey helped physically and spiritually, but none are more affecting than the letters from parents of children too young to understand the source of their help. His views on upbringing consistently emphasized the need for absolute honesty with the child. Please take that in. Casey spoke consistently about when you are bringing a child up, the upbringing of a child, absolute honesty. He condemned pampering as firmly as he condemned insecurity and lack of self-esteem, left it subscribable to an understanding, entered life with serious limitations. I will get into that because that was a interesting way to write that. Without a secure and solid background, a child's insecurity and lack of self-esteem left it susceptible to the negative habit/patterns of the faults and woes of the previous lives. Casey urged the parent always to explain the reason for proper discipline, never to apply it autocorrectly because I said so. They just put that in quotations, because I said so. But always appealing to the child's faculty for reasoning, a stable foundation could be laid for its character. When Casey came across indifference or lack of affection in a parent, he had no hesitation in saying so bluntly. Nothing disturbed him more than the parent who tried to force his own fears and prejudices down the throat of a young soul entrusted to his keeping. The source of most neuroses in later life was this force feeding in childhood of illogical do's and don'ts, as if the child were merely a puppet extension of its parents' representations and frustrations. So I'm going to explain this for a moment, and then I'm going to read a bit of what more he says to do. This was very big for Casey. Very, very big. Absolute honesty. Explain, explain, explain. So he is trying to say these reincarnated souls come in, and we're little babies. We're trying to learn how to walk. We're trying to learn how to, talk. We don't even know how to feed ourselves. We're trying to learn all these things. No wonder we're so forgetful. We come in with absolutely nothing. Oh, good, we can breathe. That's about it. That's why it's your sacred breath. We come in with nothing. It is the responsibility of a parent to then help us, right? But we have not seen that properly done in a great long time because it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time and effort to continuously explain to a child why, instead of because I said so, I told you so, because it's just wrong, because that's what we do. That doesn't make any sense to a child. That's what we do. Who's we? And why are we doing it? Proper training of a child to develop true life skills. This is why this is edgarcayce life skills. Takes a lot of time and effort. I'm going to give you an example because I did not know this. I did not know this until just a couple weeks ago. I did know that we had a lot of edgarcayce books in my household growing up. I mean, I knew who edgarcayce was as a child. I did not know this part though. I saw my mother recently. I had to visit her for the fact that my stepfather passed away. We were talking, sitting around talking, and she brought up this edgarcayce stuff that I'm doing. I said, "Yeah, I have a very interesting connection to the man." And then my mother said, "You know, Courtney, I find that fascinating because I was reading all about edgarcayce the year after you were born." So me, little baby Courtney, still vulnerable and dependent on everything around me, my mother actually dived very deep into edgarcayce, hence how the books ended up in my house. Well, what I know I've told you all here before, and so if you're new here, welcome. My parents had a very different take on speaking with me, educating me, teaching me, raising me, upbringing me, that they explained everything. Every conversation, if I asked why, they were there to answer it. Every discipline came with a why, to the point that they did not allow other adults to talk to me as like I was a child. They spoke to me as an adult. Now, do as you wish with your children, but that goes under that pampering aspect. Do not pamper children and speak to them as if they're young, because they're eventually going to be adults. Now, did they use big complex things? No. But here's an example. And many of you will all be able to relate to either what you experienced, what I experienced, and what I experienced is more based on what Edgar was saying how to raise children to actually teach them the life skills needed. So, all of us, all of us at some point living today, were told to not put our hand on a hot stove. All of us were. We were told by a parent, a guardian, someone, don't put your hand on a hot stove as a child. Okay, the child would probably ask why, and the parent would then say, because you're going to hurt yourself, or because I said so, because it's what we do. We don't touch hot stoves. Does that really give that child the experience and the understanding as to why? So, how many of us, show of hands, how many people at some point went, huh, they said not to touch a hot stove. I got to know why. And you touched a hot stove and you found out, and that hurt like hell. This is how my parents took it, the route my parents took. They set out to teach me. It was all set up. They, and with me, it had to start young. This kind of thing had to start with me much younger, but that's because I was already tall enough to touch a hot stove at a very young age because I was growing rapidly. So at a very young age, they put a chair up by the sink. And I'm like, what is going on? And then they walked me over to the stove. And I think we had an electric stove. So there was even a different kind of um, teaching because they had already taught me to not touch fire. So it was an electric stove. They said, Courtney, can you read those knobs? And I couldn't read them because I couldn't read. I was too young. They spelled it out, OFF. That means off. And I said, okay, you know. Then they said, we told you not to touch a hot stove. Yes. Do you know why? No. They turned that hot stove on. They turned the knob to on. And then I had to stand there and watch as the burner grew brighter and brighter and brighter. And they say, "You see that? That looks like fire, doesn't it?" I said, "Yes." They said, "So it's getting hot, right?" I said, "Yes." And then they said, "We're going to turn the knob off again." And I said, "Okay, it's off." And they said, "Do you think that heat went away?" I'm a child. I don't know the answer to these questions. And I just stood there looking at them. They said, "That heat didn't go away." So even when you see the knob say off, Courtney, that doesn't mean the stove's not hot. And I remember as a child going, "Whoa." Like in my mind, "Whoa." And then they said, "Now put your hand over it. Don't touch it yet, just over it." And they said, "Do you feel that heat?" And I said, "Yes." "Okay, take your hand back." Notice again, it says off. That does not mean the stove is not hot. Got it. And then they said, "Do you know why we tell you not to touch it?" "No, not really." And they said, "Okay, take your finger, just one finger, and lightly touch the heat." And I did, and I was like, "Oh shit, hurt, burn." Then they brought me over to the chair that was at the sink and said, "Run some cold water over that. When you get burned, you run some cold water over that." And then they said, "Does it feel better?" "Yes." And then I think my mom kissed me on the little finger, gave me a little boo boo kiss, and they said, "So you're never going to touch a hot stove because that can happen?" I said, "Right, I'm never going to do that." "You're never going to think that the stove is not hot just because it says off in whatever terms they put it?" "Yes, because I know it can still be." "And what do you do if you get burned?" "Cold water." My parents did that with everything, literally almost everything. It was never, and maybe it didn't have to be necessarily a full demonstration, but it was a conversation with everything. And that is what Edgar is trying to say. Be honest with your children. We don't just give these platitudes, quick explanations, or weird disciplines when the child might not even know why they're being disciplined. Always explain to your children. And if you are questioning, "Wow, I never told my child not to touch the hot stove, or I never gave them the full explanation," start thinking about how we can start implementing these things, right? I I know a lot of parents that never did that with their children. And then they get their first car and it starts overheating and overheating and overheating. And then the parent gets upset because they turn to the child and they say, "When was the last time you got an oil change?" And the kid says, "I didn't know I needed to," because it was never explained to them. These are life skills. That is proper life skills. Very proper life skills from start to finish. And we can do it at any time. But that is the biggest difference of what Edgar Cayce meant. There are times to laugh and play with your kid and let them be a child. My parents, if I started telling a crazy magical story, they would just let me keep going. I mean, I could sit there and tell them a story for like a half an hour, 40 minutes. And I mean, from start, beginning, middle, and end as a child, I mean, unicorns and all sorts of things. And they allowed me to express it. That's how I enjoyed myself. That's what I did. Play, what have you. Still let your children be children, but when it comes to life skills, be honest, be open. There's so many hurting young adults right now. Part of this whole going non-contact is because these young people of today were not taught sufficient life skills, especially for the world that they are walking into, and it is painful to watch. It's painful to watch these young Z's not really understanding the workplace because we never allowed them to really work a great deal in high school to get their, which is a government law that you can only work a total of like 16 hours. Do you really think that's enough hours for you to filter out all of the ridiculous stuff you're going to do? All the times you're going to call in because you want to go have fun and might get fired because so? Now those poor kids are experiencing all the things that we do based out of gaining the awareness of how society works. They are now learning that post college while trying to pay for that college debt, trying to afford things in life. They're having to learn through the life skills that should have been taught to them much younger. We are not serving our youth in many ways because we were, quote unquote, pampering them. So I see that Big Dad Standing Tall came in. Good to see you, my dear. This is not also, our society is so complex. Our society is difficult. It's just difficult. And like I said, to do that appropriately with a child would take a lot of time. I mean, that entire scenario I just laid out, that took some minutes. Now imagine having to do that with everything. What parent actually has that right now? A single parent that's working two jobs? No. The duo, the couple trying to raise kids, still working 2 or 3 jobs, still maybe having multiple kids, and each kid's gonna need it a little bit different. So this is not to poorly speak about what goes on. It's to give a definition and an understanding as to why we're seeing what we're seeing now. It takes a lot, a lot. Casey constantly urged that the encouragement of the best in a child was a 24-hour job and must be done gladly, never as a chore. The child reasoned must be reasoned away from its own weaker characteristics, not bribed away or made to feel unduly conscious of them. What that means in today's terms would mean to truly support your child is to teach them why, reason away from what is already innately they came in with. All these influences and karmic residue from past lives are there as an influence already. But if we can approach these young ones, these little babies, these toddlers, these children with reason and logic, it can start to override things that might not be healthy for this life. But it's never, never done with bribes, right? Or to feel, and I'm going to use the word unworthy of having a better conscious level. Hence why be honest. Religion should be presented in its most benign and spiritual aspects, free of any intolerance or coercion. The development of a good sense of humor was essential to and balance and perspective in adulthood. Okay, The development I'm sorry, that sentence read wrong or weird to me for a moment. The development of a good sense of humor was essential to the balance and perspective in adulthood. Oh, we gotta laugh, don't we? Any inclination towards music should be warmly stimulated because of its harmonious aid to a child's growing self awareness. I will tell you, even as an adult, music can help in the stimulation of self awareness. Just as exercise for the hands and arms, music used for creative purposes is helpful. Through music, you may find the greatest expression of self. In answer to the mother's question, how can the mother best cope with the temperament for the best development? Edgar Cayce replied, so in newer words, bringing this 100 years forward, the mother is essentially asking, how can I be the best mom so I can help raise my kid to have the best temperament, to have the best life? Because back when this question was asked, having a good temperament usually was an association of being successful, okay? Edgar Cayce replied, "It isn't so much cope with it as just meet it. Meet them where they're at. Be just as patient as you would like thy child be to be. The child will then be more patient with you also. What course of study should she pursue in secondary and higher education?" This is from a prior case study. And he talks about music, education. This girl's case study was actually in last episode. But isn't that beautiful? Constantly urge that the encouragement of the best in children is a 24-hour job. It is. Beautiful people. Those out there that have children or even adult children, parents, I give you a hallelujah, amen. You are a miraculous being. I chose not to do it. I wanted to, but then it just kept things, other pursuits kind of started happening. And it's also because I knew how much effort it takes, how much work it does take. So, love, care, support, encouragement to you for serving humanity in that way of raising children. It's not easy. It is not easy. So, compassion to self and others. The child must be reasoned away from its own weaker characteristics. Meaning, you have to tell that child why, you have to show that child, the child has to experience why we don't touch a hot stove in a controlled, safe environment. Because if not, they're going to do it at some point when you ain't looking. That is the weaker characteristics. It's so beautiful what he said. He, as a highly spiritual Christian man, even said, present religion benign and with the benign and spiritual aspects, free of any intolerance or coercion. Develop a good sense of humor because it helps to create the balance that they're going to need. Oh, music, music, music. Well, then this chapter also, and I know this is going long and far, folks. I haven't been here in a while, and it's working, so I'm just going to keep heading with it. Good to see you, Kim. Kim just said they matched the beat of their own drum. Yes, every child, every individual, because it goes to that heart. Yes, we find that self awareness when we find our heart. It's lovely. It's absolutely lovely. Oh, my husband just came home. So, pardon if you hear anything, folks. So, I do want to actually, I think I am going to leave it here. I think we can come back to this children aspect. I was going to stay and hang out with you, but I know what we're headed into. And it does piggyback on what was said at the beginning. But I think to really take in where he's going, especially with children born into wartime or COVID time, or pass away during these times, and then are reincarnated. That's such a big topic, folks, that I think I might make it for next time because I want to actually serve that topic greatly because we have experienced the same type of energy in our recent years. So I think we're going to continue to cover children again and in our edgarcayce on reincarnation. I think so. And if you are just tuning in, good to see you. I hope everybody is shining and enjoying themselves. So I'm going to close it up with where we began because we just took in a lot. We really did. I want to be compassionate towards myself and others, as in this was a lot because it also can take in. I'm sure most of our minds were going, wow, no, my parents would have just slapped me over the head and said, because I said so, numbskull. Or they could have said, because we don't do that. Society doesn't do that. So therefore, you don't do that, right? A lot of what was just taken in, we can think about our upbringing and how, if our parents were not consistently, gladly talking to us, mostly as if we were adult or with the anticipation that we were going to be an adult one day. Therefore, be honest, explain the why, explain the how, allow a little experience to happen before, oh shoot, a big experience happens. That also, then, if that wasn't in place and maybe more pampering was happening, well, then that can contribute to our weaker characteristics, influences from past lives being even more dominant in this life, regardless if we chose hit me with all you got or not. Parents have great roles, but us as adults, we have to look at our life and we can now have the adult mature choice to have the awareness, choose different, and take action with our children and with ourselves. So I think if you actually maybe go back and listen to a lot of this, it helps to be able to reflect back on our upbringing as individuals and reflect on aspects of our society kind of where we can't just blame generations for not, really understanding a lot of things, because where did it come from? Compassion of self and others, and individual parenting. Children are precious and wonderful. And the ones being born right now, thank you for producing them. Thank you for creating them, producing them, however you're doing it, birthing them. Thank you for having a good Friday night, is what I'm saying, because we're going to need them. They are going to be so wonderful. I can't wait. And that is where we're going to head into in the next video on edgarcayce and reincarnation, because there's going to be a lot said with that, folks. I appreciate you all. Thank you for being here. If you liked what you heard, please give a thumbs up, subscribe, and definitely make sure you're getting the notifications, because I release messages all the time and videos. So thank you all for being here in the chat. We have Big Dad Standing Tall, Kim, Seeker of Truth, Lori, Jackie J. I know Lucky Stone 888 was in the house with us. He and I will be again together Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time here at Stars of the Morning Light. Keep on shining, folks. Have a great day. Bye, everybody.